Okay, welcome to today's session, my dear friends. Hearty welcome, Dr. P. Manjula Madam Garu, Assistant Professor, Department of Botany, RBVRR Women's College, Hyderabad. Please welcome, Madam, and start the session.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, good afternoon, girls. So today we will discuss about next topic, that is exsitu conservation. Okay. So exsitu conservation means, so this is the conservation of the species outside their habitats. It is called as the exsitu conservation. Girls, are you there? Am I audible? Okay, inform your
Yes,
friends
ma'am.
to join immediately.
Yes,
Inform your friends
Okay,
to
ma'am.
join immediately. Okay. So in last class, that is in situ conservation means. So in situ conservation means that is conservation in natural habitats, whereas the ex situ means outside their natural habitats. It is called as the ex situ conservation. So this includes gene, pollen, seed, tissue culture. So here the gene banks, pollen banks, seed banks, and tissue culture, and also the DNA banks, and also includes various zoos and botanical gardens, etc. Whereas in situ conservation, so in national parks and protected areas, okay, and wildlife sanctuaries, in that, so here's the conservation in their natural habitats, whereas the ex situ means outside their natural habitats. So examples for ex situ conservation are gene banks, pollen banks, or seed banks, and tissue cultures, tissue culture labs, and DNA banks, and also include various zoos and botanical gardens. Okay, so here that to conserve all these, we have various methods of ex situ conservation. So examples are seed banks, gene banks, germplasm banks, and translocation areas, botanical parks, and zoo parks. So ex situ conservation, that is the ex situ conservation means conservation which takes place off-site. So in this method, biological diversity, conservation, sampling, and shifting, and storage and preservation of target taxa is carried out outside the natural habitat of the organism. So here we are transforming, that is conserving the plants and animals in other than their natural habitat, that is they are transported or shifting to other places, and storing in some preservative methods by using preservation methods, and storage in other area, other places. So here we are shifting this, conserving, sampling, shifting, and storage and preservation of the target taxa. Here both it may be plants and also animals. So here ex situ conservation of plants. So some special, any doubt, any problem?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so so here both animals and plants are conserved here. So some different methods are there for different, that is for plants some different ex situ methods, and for animals also different ex situ methods are there. So this method is more static, and it is quite suitable for conservation of several crops and their wild varieties. So in this method it is important for the conservation of several crops, so that is wild varieties of the crops. And various methods involved include in vitro storage, DNA storage, seed banks, pollen storage. So here the seeds are stored in so generally banks which are mainly for to store the money, whereas here the seed bank means here the seeds, that is preservation and storage of these seeds will be taking place in seed banks. In pollen, so pollen grains, DNA, so some DNA material of some of the varieties are stored in DNA in this method. Okay. So these exsitu conservation methods, like first one is the field gene banks or seed gene banks. In vitro, that is tissue culture, plant tissue culture. That is mainly this is used for slow growth cultures, and also the cryopreservation, that is seeds and embryonic axis and pollen, they are preserved it. So generally these material, that is seeds and embryonic axis and pollen, they are generally preserved at the that is at low temperature, so it is called as a cryopreservation. And DNA bank, so in this method DNA samples are preserved, so some specific varieties of the DNA are collected and they are stored in DNA banking. So ex situ conservation, it is the process of protecting. So generally it is mainly concerned with the endangered species of plant or animal outside its natural habitat. So in this method, mainly ex situ conservation. So generally these conservation methods are mainly for to protect and conserve the endangered plant and animal species. So ex situ conservation, so all the genetic material of crops, animals, birds and fish species are collected and preserved by the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, so NBPGR, New Delhi, and National Bureau of Animal Genetic Resources. So here too, that is mainly for the genetic material preservation. So these two bureaus are mainly plays important role. That is National Botanical Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources. Here mainly plant genetic material are preserved in National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resource, whereas in animal material, animal genetic material, they are preserved in National Bureau of Animal Genetic Resources. So these are the two main bureaus which are mainly used for the preservation of genetic material of plant and animals. So first one is the uses of seed banks, gene banks, or germplasm. So germplasm means, so it refers to any of the plant organ or its part, that is living material, from which new plants can be generated. So generally here also, and during the tissue culture methods also, we can use this material only, germplasm material, that is any plant organ we are cultured. So here also same method. So plant organ or its part from which new plants can be generated. So they utilize the technique of cryopreservation in liquid nitrogen at temperature of minus 196 degree Celsius. So here in this, in cryopreservation method, here we are storing or preserving this germplasm at minus 196 degrees Celsius. Okay, so some seeds show variable. So generally some seeds show, some seeds show dormancy. You know about dormancy? So dormancy means, girls, anyone? Dormancy. Girls. Dormancy means, so that is inability to germinate into germination of the seed, inability of the germination of the seed, it is called as a seed dormancy. So generally some seeds, when we sow the seeds, some they grow immediately, but some plants, some seeds will not grow immediately, so it takes some time, so some resting period. So during the favorable conditions like that only they will germinate, so it is called as a seed dormancy. So some seeds show variable periods of dormancy, and most of the seed plants therefore can be preserved in the form of their seeds in small packets and for long duration. So these are preserved here. So the places where seeds are stored are called as a seed bank. So it is also known as the gene banks, or also sometimes germplasm banks. So these three terms are somewhat similar: seed banks, gene banks, or germplasm banks. So in here in this bank, so here we have the preservation of seeds or germplasm or genetic material, they are preserved in a small pockets, and they are preserved at minus 190 degree 96 degrees and degree Celsius temperature. Okay, so next one is the animal translocation. So here that is release of animals in new locality. So here generally, these animals are transferred, that is transferred or moved to the other areas. So release of animals in new locality. So here the translocation is carried out in the forest. So that is transfer or that is shifting of the animals into other localities. So generally that is from the natural habitats to other localities, and here we keen observation is there in this location. So here the translocation is carried out in following cases. So when the this translocation, that is transfer of the animals, that is shifting of the animals to other places, will be carried out during the, so when the species on which an animal is independent becomes rare, so that is rare animals can be translocated, or when a species is endemic or restricted to a particular area, so endemic species are transferred are due to habit destruction and unfavorable environmental conditions. So during the unfavorable environmental condition, that is the animal is unable to grow in that particular habitat due to habitat destruction, or otherwise so high temperatures or low temperatures, so they are not preferable for these animals. So in that condition, so they are transferred to other areas, and where all the regulation of the temperature all will be monitored, and increase in population in an area. So due to increase in population, so some animals they cannot get sufficient nutrients, so in that case also increase in population in an area. So these are the conditions. During these conditions, so the animals, that is mainly endemic or endangered animals, will be uh, transferred to other areas, and here there they are conserved. So next one is botanical gardens. So the botanical garden, it is a place where flowers, fruits and vegetables are grown. So mainly in botanical gardens, so mainly flowering plants, fruiting plants and also vegetable plants are grown, and the botanical garden provide beauty and calm environment. So the most of them have started keeping exotic plants for educational and research purpose. So in botanical gardens, along with these plants, so exotic plants, that is the plants which are exported from other areas, that is they are transferred, they are taken from other areas, and they are grown here. So keeping exotic plants for educational and research purpose also grown in botanical garden. So many rare plants, so they are not observed in other areas, so that type of plants, and also endangered plants, so they are going to extinct. That type of plants lives in botanical garden, which have taken task of conservation of plants in real sense. So here mainly in botanical garden, so mainly it concerned with the plants, and in these plants also rare and endangered plants are mainly concentrated, and they are conserved in botanical garden. So in India, the first botanical garden was established in Bombay in 1830 by Agricultural Society, and in 1838 one more garden was established in Madras. So first botanical garden is located in Bombay. Okay, and later again another botanical, it is established in Madras. So some botanical gardens of India includes Lloyd Botanical Garden at Darjeeling, Indian Botanical Garden at Kolkata, and National Botanical Garden at Lucknow, etc. So these are some of the botanical gardens. So generally here mainly flowering plants, so they give beauty. So next one is the zoological gardens or zoos. So in zoos, wild animals are maintained in captivity. So in a specific conditions, they are grown. So conservation of wild animal species which are rare and endangered. So here also in rare and endangered animals will be conserved. So the oldest zoo, that is Schönbrunn Zoo, which exists today, also was established in Vienna in 1759. So first oldest Jew is Schönbrunn Jew, which is established in 1759. Okay, so the first Indian Jew was set up by Raja Rajendra Malik Bahadur at Marble Palace in Kolkata. So first Indian Jew was in India. So in overall worldwide, so first one is the Strasbourg. Oldest Jew is the Strasbourg. Whereas in India, so first that is Geological Garden or Jew is established in Calcutta. So these are the geological gardens you already know. So some examples of exsitu conservation. So mainly these. So mainly in exsitu conservation. So girls, so is it clear exsitu conservation? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So exsitu
Yes,
conservation
ma'am.
means here the conservation of the plant and animals, endangered plants and animals in other than their natural habitat. So examples for exsitu conservation are, first one is seed banks, gene banks or germplasm banks, and botanical gardens and zoo parks or zoos. Okay. So some examples of exsitu conservation include one-horned rhinoceros, golden micalia. So here mainly these conservation of these animals, mainly horned rhinoceros. So these are the rare and endangered animals, golden micalia. So botanical parks and zoos are considered the most conventional method of exsitu conservation by Hamilton. So it involves transferring the threatened, endangered, and extinct species away from their native environment. So it targets the plants and animal populations, and exsitu conservation provides artificially created environment or conditions like to their actual habitat. So here in exsitu conservation, so here artificial we are creating all the conditions which are required for their generally for plants and animals. So where the plants, so generally here we are only creating. So we are also here the maintaining the temperature also and humidity for these. So artificial we are creating and providing the conditions for their actual habitats to the plant and animal population. So it increases the genes, seed and sperms, ovules, etc. viability through cryopreservation. Survival of the threatened species is the primary approach of exsitu conservation. So main aim is to mainly conserve the threatened species. So it also targets the maintenance of genetic diversity. So variation in the genes level. So here we are mainly for the genetic diversity. So exsitu conservation of plants is mainly established to preserve seeds, pollens, and ovules. So the plant tissue culture and plant breeding also part of the exsitu conservation, through which plants are produced in vitro. So you know about the plant tissue culture. So in tissue culture method, here we are by taking the small part of any part of the plant. By taking this, they are cultured, growing the culture media. So in a small duration, we can grow many plants, micro propagation. So exsitu conservation of animals is established to preserve semen, ova, and DNA. So captive breeding and embryo culture are also the techniques that allow the reintroduction of the species. So it conserves genetic resources, wild species, and cultivated species. And now, so what are the importance of exsitu conservation means? It conserves the genetic resources, wild species, and also the cultivated species. Next, the knowledge of the genetic structure of the target species, regeneration methods, and maintenance of gene pool become necessary to establish the exsitu conservation. So we already discussed about the conservation methods. So first one is geological gardens. So here, so in geological gardens, so it provides the food, shelter, and medicines to a wide variety of animals and birds. So in geological gardens, so we have so here they only take care of these animals by providing food, shelter, and also medicine. So there are more than 164 zoos in India, and zoo provides a confined space to the animals through small cages. So here in this also, in the zoo also, for the different type of animals and birds, so small different types of cages, paddocks, fenced in fields, and they're constructing different type of shelters for different types of animals. and programs on animals well-being and captive breeding and environmental education, and also the exhibitions also provided in the zoos. So captive breeding provides, so in a particular area only. So captive breeding provides an important tool to prevent the extinction of animal species. So its primary goal is to conserve the maximum genetic variability within the species. So it also reduces the mating between closely related individuals. So in order to minimize the inbreeding and also the loss of genetic variation. So in the zoos generally, so these are the different types. So curators in the zoo. So in the curators, the main function of curators in the zoo is are exception trained in animal and actually, and so mainly they are mainly concentrate on these animals and take care of these animals. Keepers perform routine checkups of the animals, and veterinarians, so generally they preventive measures against the contagious, so checking the animals and if any diseases are there, so to preventive measures will be taken. And trained volunteers are also there to guide visitors and also the monitor their actions. So next one is the botanical gardens. So we already discussed about botanical gardens. So in the here variety of rare and exotic plant species are there. So the botanical garden provides essential tool for education and also the research purpose, and also allows the growth of flowers, fruits and vegetables by providing similar growth conditions and also nutritional requirements. And here also plantings are scientifically ordered based on their phylogeny. So here based on the taxonomical classification, phylogeny and also taxonomy, and it also includes nurseries and also the greenhouses. So these are also comes under the botanical gardens, nurseries, greenhouses to propagate and cultivate exotic plants. So it helps in studying the tropical and temperate ecosystem. So the botanical gardens maintains the sustainability of the abundant ornamental plants. So in botanical gardens mainly conserves the endangered and rare plant species, and it looks aesthetic to the visitors. So gene banks, its function as a biorepository. So here the storing. So the gene bank preserves the animal's genetic material as well as the plant's structures with regeneration capacity. So it involves the freezing of the animal's sperms and eggs in geological freezers. So it also freezes the plants, cuttings and seed stalks. So these are some of the examples. So coral fragments can also be preserved in water tanks by providing a controlled environment. So thus the gene bank serves as a center for keeping genetic and reproductive material. So it also uses the cryopreservation method. Okay, so seed bank. So seed bank means it stores seeds to conserve the genetic material, and seed banks are seed libraries, has a primary approach to increase the yield. So the main aim is to provide the increase the yield and also the disease resistant plants and also the nutritional quality of the plants. So here the cryopreservation preserves the seeds viability for the long time. So in this way here the preserving the seeds for longer duration, that is many years, 10 years like that. So we can introduce genetically modified methods through seed banks. So in vitro bank, so it involves the preservation of birds, meristematic cells and tissues in semi-solid or liquid nutrient medium. So it is a kind of slow growth conservation method used prevalently to conserve the seedless plants. So in vitro bank, so here other than the seeds, here we are conserving the plant material, that is it is also known as a germplasm, that is preservation of birds or meristematic cells. So generally growth will take place at meristematic region. So that type of meristematic cells and also the tissues in semi-solid or liquid nutrient medium. So cryobank means it preserves the seeds and embryos through cryopreservation at -196 degrees Celsius. So cryobank targets to conserve the extinct species. So it is also helpful for preservation of animal genetic resources. Next one is a pollen bank. So it stores the pollen grains in liquid nitrogen, and pollen bank plays a important role in cross breeding. So these are again used for cross breeding. So these are the different types of in exit conservation. So field gene bank, other myth and other types. So field gene bank means it is a method of planting plants in a artificially created environment. So we can conserve the germplasm of essential plants through this method, and it needs more land area, soil, and is vulnerable to pests and diseases. So aquarium, it also comes under the exit. So it seems like a vivarium that varies in size. Aquarium houses aquatic plants and animals. So the plants in the aquarium gives through enough oxygen to the water bodies within the aquarium. So we can keep small aquarium at the home. So large public aquarium house fishes, otters, and turtles. Glass are acrylic typically frame the body of the aquarium. So this also comes under. So in aquarium also we are preserving the some type of aquatic plants and animals are preserved. So next, last one is the advantages of exit conservation. So it requires less area, and threatened species are protected from all adverse factors like predation and also the poaching. And under human supervision, the plant and animal health can be monitored, and medical assistance can be given as required. So any disaster or disease management becomes easy in exit biodiversity and conservation, and as it only conserves the small population, so we are only concentrating on the rare or endemic or endangered plants will be conserving here. So it so small populations, and we are only concentrating on the small population. So we could measure the genetic diversity of the population, and we can conduct selective breeding programs for animals and plants to increase their numbers if endangered. And it also helpful for the educational purpose, as a researchers and educators may study the reproductive physiology, lifestyle, and ecology of endangered species up close. So exit collection sites could raise funds for conservation efforts. So these are the advantages of exit conservation. So last final conclusion is, so biodiversity conservation, it is necessary to maintain the ecological balance and continue natural process and also and support the ecosystem. So exit biodiversity conservation has a practical approach to protect rare and endangered species. So here both types of conservation, that is ex situ and in situ. So what are the differences between ex situ and in situ, girls? Anyone? So ex situ means, so final point. So the benefits of ex situ conservation are advanced reproduction techniques will maximize the probability of reproductive success for endangered species. So due to human intervention, health of organisms can be monitored and medical assistance is accessible whenever required. So there are more than 150 botanical parks globally protecting and conserving more than 80,000 species, around 850 zoos with 3,000 species of plants and animals, mammals, amphibians, and many gene banks. So organisms are well attended to provided food security, medical aid, and hence have a greater lifespan and reproductive capacity. So this is about the ex situ and in situ conservation, biodiversity. Girls, any doubt? Girls, are you there? Any doubt?
Yes, madam. No, madam.
Okay. Okay, girls. So I will stop here in next class. That is next, from the next week onwards, I will take for the last unit. I will take classes. Okay. So now I will stop this. Okay. I will forward this PPT once go through this PPT. Okay. Okay, girls. Bye. Thank you. Okay, girls, you can leave.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.